Are you looking for a fun way to win up to 25 times your money this football and basketball season? Test your skills on Prize Picks, the most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Just select 2 or more players, pick more or less on their projections for a wide variety of stats, and place your entry. It's as easy as that. If you have the skills, you can turn $10 into $250 with just a few taps. Easy gameplay, quick withdrawals, and injury insurance on your picks are what makes Prize Picks the #1 daily fantasy sports app. Ready to test your skills? Join the PrizePicks community of more than 7 million players who have already signed up. Right now, PrizePicks will match your first deposit up to $100. Just visit prizepicks.com/bluewire and use code BLUEWIRE. That's code BLUEWIRE at prizepicks.com/bluewire for a first deposit match of up to $100. PrizePicks, daily fantasy sports made easy.
Today's episode is brought to you by Cars.com. With over 2 million vehicles and 50,000 more added every day, Cars.com will match you with the perfect car for you, your budget, your life, your style. And if you're ready to say goodbye to your current car, Cars.com will get you an instant offer to cash it in. Just start by entering your license plate and get matched with a local dealer who will write you the check. So whether you're looking to buy or sell, just go to Cars.com. It's magical.
Hello, friends. This is Kirk Henderson and Josh Bowe coming to you on Friday night, January 20th at the wonderful time of about 9:10. The Dallas Mavericks just defeated the Miami Heat 115-90. Really an outstanding win for a team that really needed a statement game. Josh, how you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. Nice to have another early game. We're recording at just under 9:10 Central Time. So big Mavericks win. We're recording before 9:15. Nothing to complain about.
No.
Things are good.
No,
I mean, there are things to complain about, but we don't have to talk about it.
Well, with a game like this, it was very interesting coming into it. I think all of us were a little, at Mavs Moneyball at least, were a little worried that the Heat were going to just slap the Mavericks. I mean, it was a team that's won 4 out of 5. They just handed it to the Pelicans a couple days ago, and the Mavericks are now without. We've not spoken since the Christian Wood news broke that he has a fracture in his left hand. You can see it on the dunk that happened. And it made me wonder at the time if something like that happened. It was the 3-pointer from the corner, gets his own rebound and forcefully jams it in. But he's going to be out for kind of a period of time. After he hurt his stomach, he had 2 points in the fourth quarter. Now we know why. Like, he just wasn't very effective. So even if it's something he could play through, it's kind of up in the air question of whether it's something he can play through. So coming out, and the Mavericks are going to be very small, where Kidd talked in the pregame that they were going to have to play Dorian at 5, which was a little worrisome. And, and the crazy part was it didn't matter. The Dwight Powell played 33 minutes, 33 pretty good minutes. And the Mavericks just look great. Like as Luka, as much trouble as Luka had with the double team against, who did we play last time? Atlanta. He didn't have that trouble against the Heat. He was in his bag he made a lot earlier decisions tonight, but also the Heat were doing some junk defense stuff, a lot of zone. They're not very big. Like Bam Adebayo, I guess, is a center, but he's like 6'10". And so it's like this was kind of a nice team to have to play in your first game where you're small, because they don't have a lot of size themselves. So what all did you see out there?
I saw the defense looking a lot more spry, and I hate to do this, this early. It's only been one game, but it was hard not to notice the defensive effort and the defensive intensity that the Mavericks played with, and not think about, well, Christian Wood's not playing. And there's just a difference with Dwight Powell, and with Wood, you have to play more drop and you have to be a little bit more conservative, because he just isn't a high quality defender, and he can't really, you want to keep him as close to the rim as possible. You want to keep his assignments simple, and that makes things tough when you've got a perimeter defense that isn't necessarily, a lockdown perimeter defensive group that the Mavericks have, especially when they're missing all their guys.
Yeah.
And I mean, you could just tell with Powell on the floor, like he can play the level of the screen in the pick and roll. And that's not necessarily like trapping, just being able to flash and meet the ball handler at the level of the screen. Just being able to do that and not get immediately burned by it makes such a big difference for this group defensively. It puts a lot less strain on guys like Bullock and Finney-Smith and Green to, have to do everything and fight through the screen and have to play basically like 100% perfect or the play gets blown up. It makes a big difference. And Powell had 2 steals. The Mavericks had 7 steals total. And the funny thing is the Heat didn't necessarily have an awful offensive game. They still played really I think I got some blowback because I kind of made a tongue-in-cheek joke on Twitter about Wood and his agent. And I got some people that responded to me. They were like, yeah, well, I mean, the Heat are still scoring at the paint. And I'm like, yeah, I mean, that's fine. But if you're going to limit a team to 4 of 20 from 3, and the 4, obviously, like the percentage is a little bit lucky, but only 23-point attempts by the Heat. And they came into this game 7th in 3-point rate in terms of volume of shots that are 3-pointers. So they did a really good job at running the Heat off the 3-point line. And I think that matters when all of the players that you're playing in your starting lineup, at least, can all kind of get out to the perimeter and not feel uncomfortable. Unlike someone with Christian Wood who's playing drop, and that opens you up to pull up threes,
which I don't,
and corner threes.
Part of me is irritated at the concept of him playing drop, but he just has bad hips for that. Like Powell is really shifty out there and kind of.
Powell's a good athlete on the perimeter.
Yeah, and you'd expect Wood to be better at that with how good he is on offense, but he's just a different movement type, and he's not. If they could ever show, it's probably, frankly, too late in his basketball development to ever show him how to effectively blitz. It's just something that you either got to know how to do it, you got to have some instincts for it, and he just doesn't. But this was the defensive stuff was fun. I did enjoy it. I think the Mavericks still gave up a fair number of paint points, but that's okay. If you're going to guard the 3-point line like that, we also have to admit to a degree that 3-point defense is there's a lot of luck involved. So it's like challenging the 3-point shooters was really great because they've not done that well in a while. So that's also important. And then the Heat also just missed some shots, and that just let Dallas go to work.
Yeah. And this was definitely, I mean, you could tell from the opening tip, one team was a team that seemed really desperate and wanted to, just felt like they really needed a win. And the other team looked complacent. And the Heat have been on a good run. They haven't necessarily been challenged too hard in the last couple of weeks. They've been playing really good basketball. And the Mavericks, I mean, if they lost this game, if they dropped to, what would they have been? They'd be 20.
Basically one game above 500.
Yeah. If that happened, if they were 24 and 23, things tighten up. And, Kid called them out on defense after the Atlanta game. Like everything just kind of lined up. Like they desperately needed a win.
They did.
They played like it from the opening tip. And the Heat just didn't look like a team that they didn't care if they lost this game, is what I'm saying. But you could tell one team really cared about if they would have lost this game. It was obviously the Mavericks. And sometimes you need that. That's good. Like it's not bad. So that helps.
So I don't really know what else to add to this game specifically. There's probably like a pair of guys that I'd like to talk about, and then we can maybe sort of move on from the game because I thought the conversation around the game is starting to get interesting. Off the bench, Reggie Bullock played another excellent game. He's now 28 for 59 from 3 in January. So he has arrived for anyone curious. Like he was at plus 33.
4 straight games in double digits scoring. Before this run of 4 games in double-digit scoring, he had he had 4 games of double-digit scoring total in the month of December. And they played a lot of games in December.
Yep.
So he's already done it in almost about half the games, it looks like. So that's pretty good. And it's so funny, man. I mean, he's literally doing it right at around the same amount time he turned his season around last season. Like it's just scientists need to study this. Like I need to know why. Like it's just it's baffling to me because, like, again, it's not like he's taking different shots or doing anything different.
No, they're
He's
just going in.
Yeah, it's
It's
crazy.
such a confidence thing, and it's interesting. You know, him coming off the bench is interesting to me. Tim Hardaway obviously came back from that ankle sprain, hilarious 1 for 10 shooting night, and that didn't matter. He was still a plus 25. That's how bad the Heat were at certain things. And then the last guy I think we should touch on, second Green back from injury, Josh Green, 27 minutes, 12 points, which is great. Hit 5 free throws, also great, and played sort of his most he had an and one finish that pleased me a great deal, like rip through finish type stuff that is very difficult. You know, it's a strength thing, confidence thing. I liked his game a great deal. He brings that energy that the Mavericks have gotten. Like Frank does it, Ntilikina does it a little bit, but Josh is just more skilled. So there's elements of that. I mean, he had 3 offensive rebounds, which the Mavericks have not, you know, they had 10 for the game, which is not something they really do. I don't know. I liked this game. I wanted to mention him.
I mean, he shows that dynamic, the dynamic ability. You know, he's like the only guy other than Luka and Dinwiddie on the roster beside, you know, and then, you know, there's Hardy. But in terms of the regular rotation guys, it's him. It's Luka, it's Dinwiddie, and then it's him in terms of guys that can just do stuff attacking off the dribble. And it makes such a difference. You know, they really missed that while he was out.
Well, and just to sort of pivot from the game a little bit, one of the things I found fascinating listening to both pregame, the commentators, and halftime, I didn't watch postgame, was the national media has picked up the "Does Luka need help?" mantra, or in Stephen A. Smith's case, Luka needs help, very loudly. And there was just lots of discussion about, you know, Spencer Dinwiddie's gone on a few podcasts. He seems to sort of like take challenge to it, not necessarily offense. Like none of these guys are going to take offense. Like modern NBA's, like LeBron James asks for new players every third game. Like this is just part of it. But I find that interesting because it's so confusing game to game. If you're a hardcore fan of this team, you watch that game tonight and you're like, we should never trade Josh Green in a million years. And I understand that sentiment. But I also want to say, like, again, like 12 points and 5 rebounds is great. It's also 12 points and 5 rebounds. I've been thinking about like the national conversation and what that means, if anything. And I just wanted to kind of give you a chance to expound on it a little bit. Or are you just over it at this point?
I don't know. It's just like, because with us, it's something we've been talking about longer than like it's the interesting thing to me that might not be interesting to our listeners is more just like how people are catching up to things we've been talking about since 2019. So like, this isn't like a new conversation. This isn't a new thing for us, but it's just interesting to see how other media outlets and other media people are finally kind of catching up to what we've been saying for, you know, it's going to be 4 years this summer.
And to be clear, we've been right this whole time, not very interested in that debate. But where I get a little confused to a degree is just where Dallas is right now. They also can't do very much.
Right.
Like they're just sort of, and this is why we were so grumpy, because it's like, now that everybody's realized that the Mavericks should maybe have done a little more, or you know, it's like the Bojan is it Bojan Bogdanovic? Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Bojan Bogdanovic conversation. Like Adrian Wojnarowski says the Mavericks are very interested in him and Nerlens Noel. I cannot fucking describe to you how crazy I will go if they trade for those 2 specific players in 2023 when they could have signed Nerlens Noel in 2017, and they could have signed Bojan Bogdanovic in 2019 if they had any interest. They didn't. So it's like, that's why it's just, it's a weird situation to be in, because I more or less think that the Mavericks should continue with the team that they have. Ride it out. Do not give up anything right now and see what you can do later. If they get their butts kicked, so be it. That will mean Cuban, Kidd, and everyone will have to take their medicine too. And it's, Kidd to a degree, he's not like come out and said anything specific, but him admitting that Dorian has to play the 5 is a all but an admission that his free agency signing is a failure.
And Mavericks had one big on the roster, and McGee still didn't play tonight.
A minute. And that doesn't give me like comfort because I want to be wrong, but it's fascinating to look because the pressure is going to ratchet up. I mean, Tim McMahon on the Hoop Collective today mentioned our site. That was fun. And then, so thanks, Tim, even though he won't hear this, but it just sort of talked about how it's like everybody all at once has sort of realized the Mavericks are not quite it. And it's been overshadowed because the rest of the West is somehow worse. Like Christian Wood getting hurt, I don't think is going to really affect them in the standings because they'll win just enough basketball games. He'll probably come back in 3 weeks or something, and they'll have played 500 ball the whole time. I mean, this is odd.
Yeah, I mean, what if this was last season, they would be right around like the 7th seed at this moment, and they'd be like really far back from being like in 3rd or 4th, I think.
Yep.
So they're, the West is weird. Like
it is.
No one had the Clippers being this bad. The Timberwolves, I think some people thought might be bad, but I mean, to actually see it is another thing. Like the Suns are 2 games under 500. Like the Warriors are a game under 500.
They beat Brooklyn the other night like they stole something. Basketball is just so odd this year. I'm in a group chat with some fans who are kind of like friends of mine who are kind of sick of the NBA conceptually after just years. And it's like, well, this is getting to be, like football is really great when everybody's kind of the same because there's not enough games because every game feels like it matters. So if everybody's on like a similar level, you don't mind because it means every week your team has a chance. When you play 82 of these, it starts to be very annoying because it's like, what sort of product are we watching?
Right. And it's hard to tell what's real and what's not real. It's just because every win you're like, oh, that was a good win. And then that team you beat just lost 5 in a row. And now instead of that being a over 500 win, it's an under 500 win,
right. Right.
It's weird. It's a weird season. And I'm with you. I don't want them to trade any first rounders for any marginal upgrades. Now, if something crazy happens and they can make their star trade at the deadline, like I don't expect that, but that's like the only thing I would want them to do other than anything that would be like player for player, like in terms of draft picks. If they do like you said, if they do a first for Bojan, for 34-year-old Bojan, when they could have given him money and not traded a first round pick when he was 20 or 30 or 29 or 30, like that's just that's crazy. I hate that idea. I don't know. They need to write it out, and I think that's the way that the West is probably makes it even more hard for them to want to write it out because it is up for grabs. Like even with Denver and Memphis kind of running away with things, I mean, I'm still not scared of Memphis in a playoff series. Like the Mavericks have played the Nuggets pretty well in the Jokic era. Like those teams aren't like the 2018 Warriors or anything like that. Like they don't feel like these unbeatable Titans like that's felt like the NBA has had in the last couple of years, whether it's LeBron's awesome teams or Steph's awesome Warriors teams. Like for the first time in a while, it's like there's no dynasty, there's no juggernaut super team. So that must make it hard to want to be patient, right? Because you're like, man, what if we just had 2 more guys to this roster that could do things? How much better we'd be. And it's kind of hard to argue that, but I still want them to be patient.
Well, and I wrote about this the day of. I don't think we had enough chance to talk about it against Atlanta. I am perfectly okay with Luka Doncic deciding to leverage anything on anyone. Honestly, I really am. Because that's the way the NBA works now. I don't love it, but that's, everybody's sort of spoiled by Dirk, and then we didn't have a superstar. Dirk was he's 32 when they won the championship. So the closest thing he did to flexing his muscles was ask for Rajon Rondo, which they did. And that was a disaster. So it's like Luka, finally nudging and saying, hey, let's do something. I'm okay with that, because what that then means is he has some responsibility for it too, which means he has to recruit, which means he has to talk to fellow team, to players across the league, openly tamper. I don't care. Dirk never did that stuff. And I'm sorry, it's the way of the world. It's selling. And Luka taking ownership in this means he too is responsible. It's why I get so frustrated with various LeBron James narratives, because he has taken all of the player agency and very little of the player responsibility, because he wanted a lot of the Lakers trades that have happened. So him asking for more, it's like, well, you did your part already. Anyway, it's a little bit of a side tangent, but I don't know. I'm just sort of, I don't know, I'm all over the place today. So with that, I think we should probably pivot to the last bit of news and then get on with our night. Does that work for you?
That works for me.
So if you're on the social media sphere, and you may or may not be, a great portion of SB Nation, which is our parent blog company, which is owned by Vox Media, made the decision today to shut down a significant number of SB Nation sites. 9 to 10 SB Nation basketball sites got shut down in their entirety. Mavs Moneyball is not one of them. That is in no small part due to people who peruse and continuously visit our website. We have a loyal base, and I am grateful for that as much as I am frustrated by the decision. The second thing that happened today was we learned that by the end of February, the podcast network that SB Nation runs, which you are listening to through a particular RSS feed, which you have subscribed to, is getting nuked. What does that mean for Josh and I? We don't know. We have it's been a business day. We are making there's a lot of decisions to be made. We hope, I will say that I think, pretty affirmatively, that what Josh and I do will continue in some form, right?
Right. I don't expect much to change for our listeners. Things are going to change for us as we try to figure out back end things,
right?
And platforms, and how are we going to get paid now? And
the technical side of things becomes like this feed that you listen to that automatically downloads to whatever device you have. If we get access to that feed and it becomes ours as opposed to SB Nation's, nothing will change for you. If they do not grant that is when things become slightly more difficult for us.
You might have to subscribe to a new Mavericks podcast.
I will be so annoying on so many platforms, because that's how, it's just awareness. Like we have anywhere, and I'm sharing some inside baseball here, but depending on the time of year in a given month, we have anywhere from 20 to 40,000 individual listeners. That means people who drop in from time to time. That means subscribers, that sort of thing. It's not a ton, but that's also a small town in Texas. Like our podcast feed could host a 5A high school. It's something that we're going to have to figure out. We have time because, like I said, end of February. We will be talking more as we learn more. But in the meantime, I really don't expect anything to change in terms of our feed, because, people come and listen to our show because of the consistency of the work. I think that gets lost in a great deal of online ventures, particularly people who want to start something like, oh, I want to do a podcast. I'm glad you should. If you want to go make something, but you build an audience by consistent content. And that's what Josh and I do. And that's what we will continue to do until we learn any more. Now, we still work and write for Mavs Moneyball. That is something that will stay in the short term. But we just wanted to kind of let people know that if we start to get odd, both on our redirecting people to a new subscription, that sort of thing, that's why. But I just wanted to talk about it. We've been thinking about it all day, but Josh and I both have day jobs, so it was like really weird to get this announcement and then not be able to do anything about it. And then it's Friday evening, so
yeah, I spent in between my work meetings Googling what Patreon is and all that kind of fun stuff. So we have some work. We have some work to do on our end, but yeah, like Kirk said, at most, the worst thing that would happen to you on the listener end is you might have to subscribe to a new podcast feed. But otherwise, we plan on keeping this going business as usual from your end. But it'll be different from our end in terms of what we're doing on the back end. But hopefully, that doesn't make it to y'all, and hopefully nothing changes for y'all, and you just keep listening to this feed and nothing changes and everything's fine. But yeah, there could be some change in a month or so, but we're gonna figure that part out.
That's right. So, and also in wonderful news, the Sunday game against the Clippers got moved to 1:30. Otherwise we're most of our staff is Cowboys fans, which would have meant I would have been stuck doing everything, which sucks.
And I had a lot, and I don't know about you, but I had a decent amount of Mavs fans that were like, I'm stuck with these tickets, like no one's gonna want to buy them and everyone's gonna be at the game, like I'm just gonna have to eat it. So I'm glad those people can like either sell their tickets or go to the game and not worry about missing the Cowboy game.
Yep. Well, the only thing that might be weird is like my wife is like, you should take Parker to the game, which is a good idea. But if that's the case, I'm not sure if we will do one of these. But we'll figure out something. It'll even if we have to
someone
talk
will be here.
Late, yeah, we'll do something. So thanks for hanging out with us, guys. This has been Kirk Henderson and Josh Bowe, and we will talk with you on Sunday.